Joining us on the program now from Laidlaw College, Dr. Samuel Carpenter. Sam, kia ora, thanks for your time today.
Morning, Andrew.
Firstly, let's jump back into history. This is, not that long after the signing of the Treaty of Waitangi, Maori seats became something which was locked in as part of how we do democracy here in New Zealand.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we had a settler constitution essentially in the early 1850s, settler parliament 1854. First four Māori seats were created in 1867, and that was slightly unusual because it was a universal adult Māori male suffrage.
Yep.
Sorry, adult suffrage.
Yep.
And that was because the standard voting rights were based on property ownership, but Māori didn't own property as individuals, so they couldn't vote. Well, that was the official line anyway. They couldn't vote in an average sort of electorate because they didn't own individual property for the most part. So these seats were created really to allow for a Māori voice in Parliament, which is pretty unusual in terms of the global picture, I think.
And certainly Māori having votes for, the settler Parliament at the time, there were many Pākehā who weren't landowners that didn't get votes, and no women at all had votes back then. This is really back in the day, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, it's a strange anomaly, but the fact that actually Māori had a form of universal male suffrage before there was a general adult voting right in New Zealand. But it was restricted, of course, to these four seats. It wasn't obviously you couldn't get a Māori voice in the other seats per se.
Now, in terms of motivation, it's always difficult to analyse the motivation of historical figures. But just wanting to contrast two conflicting thoughts on this one. One was that this was a implementation of some of the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, that the treaty said that Māori should have a say in the country. This was a way of acknowledging that. Others would say that actually there was a concern of, just the numbers of Māori compared to Pākehā settlers at the time. This is a way of acknowledging but also limiting Māori influence. What's your thoughts on those conflicting views?
It could be both and. Yep. I mean, it certainly allowed for a Māori voice. I mean, there were sort of two ways we could have gone at the time. And we decided to create these seats, but there was another option, and that was actually to create, in effect, Māori regional provincial governments in areas where Māori populations were dominant, and of course there were plenty at the time. But there was sort of for want of a better word, an incorporationist or assimilationist kind of tendency within the greater political system that wanted to bring Māori in. And in fact, Māori actually had an expectation. It seems clear that chiefs had an expectation that they would be part of these governing councils, as in Parliament. At the time that the settler Parliament was created. And so, I think this was a halfway house, to create these Māori seats.
Questions about the, it's still part of our system today. It has changed slightly. Of course, there's more Māori seats. It's more proportional now, depending on how many people are on the Māori roll. How does it work today in contrast to perhaps original intentions, Sam?
Well, I mean, the thing is, given population demographics, the Māori voice will always be a minority voice, whether it's, the Māori seats, whether it's Māori voices within the main political parties. I mean, you could maybe foresee a day where we have a lot more people of Māori ethnicity, and so that Māori voice will be strengthened in the main political parties.
Yeah.
But at MMP, I think it's a fact that we have more Māori representation than we've ever had.
Yeah.
In our central governing system. So, I mean, I think it's really a question of what's the minimum we can do, but what's the maximum we can do to, I guess, reflect reflect and honour the treaty relationship where Māori tino rangatira voice was was guaranteed.
Yeah.
So how do we reflect that in our political system as a whole?
Is this a way of doing that? Is this a way of demonstrating kawanatanga? I suppose that there is an aspect of self-governance in this regard, that people on the Maori rolls can vote for their representatives in Parliament. It's not two separate parliaments, but it is two separate systems within that Parliament. I mean, again, lots of different views on this one, but is this essentially an attempt to solve that problem, do you think?
It's a way of representing a Māori voice within our central government, which is essentially, parliamentary government is how essentially New Zealand is governed.
Yeah.
So we need a Māori voice in there in some way, and I think, in principle, I think having a distinct Māori or treaty voice through Māori seats is something that we may need to, retain. Until we can come up with a better system. Because otherwise, Māori voices, as I've alluded to, are can tend to be not amplified within the main parties, even within the MMP. So to me, it's at base, it's about a treaty honouring thing, a treaty right thing, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
And a justice thing, really. How do we reflect that important constituency, which is the Indigenous voice within our political system, within our kawanatanga? Because actually, an eminent New Zealand authority has said that the Crown is Māori too, which I think is a very interesting idea. As in kawanatanga, because it claims to govern the whole, and it does, for most intents and purposes, needs to have a distinct Māori voice within kawanatanga, within the Crown, and I kind of agree with that.
It certainly has. The way in which Maori seats work within Parliament has adapted over the time. As you mentioned, though, there is now Maori representation in Parliament in all political parties, and there is a higher level of representation under MMP. Some would ask the question, well, do we still need Maori seats in that regard? Yes, Maori have a seat at the table. Does that need to be done under the model of Maori seats, or is that an outdated model?
I don't think it has to be necessarily, but I think it's about the best structural device that we've got at the moment to ensure a treaty voice, as I put it, an Article 2 or a tino rangatira voice, as in a voice that represents a tribal or hapu iwi constituency in some way, which I think is what Māori seats do, and potentially it's what a Māori ward does in regional government as well. Ensures that we get that voice, even though, of course, Māori could be elected within a general ward or a general seat, as they are.
Important to recognise the principles of the treaty in the way in which we do government and governance and kawanatanga here in New Zealand. Of course, it is going to be different than other parts of the world because of this special relationship, the special founding treaty, which is a part of our nation's history. Sam, thank you so much for your insight, your wisdom on this matter. Thanks for joining us today.
Good, Andrew.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.